Well, it's 7 o'clock, so I guess I'll start. Maybe we can start with just a little prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we give you praise and thanks for all the many blessings that you've bestowed upon us. We thank you for this opportunity to come together this evening and to share this journey, this pilgrimage. I ask for the guidance of your Holy Spirit throughout the evening. May you speak to each of those who are here in the way that you want them to speak to them. We ask for wisdom, understanding. Trust in you. Right. Okay, I'll start with a little bit of history of the El Camino, just to kind of let you know what it is, and for those of you who don't know. The El Camino started back in the 9th century, so 800s. And what started it is they found the remains of St. James the Great, the apostle. And St. James had ministered up in Galicia, Spain. It's a province up in Spain. And he had gone up there and took the gospel message up there. Went back to Jerusalem, was martyred, and then but buried there in Galatia. And because of wars and a variety of different things, his remains were lost as to where he was buried. And in the 9th century, 800s, they found his remains and were able to identify them as his and move them to what is now Santiago. Santiago wasn't there then. Santiago was built up around because of the remains being there. But they buried him appropriately. And then people started doing pilgrimages to Santiago, to the grave of St. James, primarily for spiritual reasons, sometimes as a penance for sins. But in those days, it would be a very extensive journey because many of them would start from wherever they lived. They might be coming from Ireland, from England, from Germany, from Middle East, could be coming from just about anywhere, and would journey all that way. And eventually, a group of Templars got formed, and they were people who supported the Camino. So they would provide people who were on the pilgrimage. They would provide them with guidance and direction in terms of how to get from A to B. They would provide hospitality for them, a place to stay. Hostels started to build up, and because of their service. It died out again and wasn't quite as popular in the, I'm not sure exactly what the time frame was, but I know particularly in the 20th century, it really kind of died out. And a lot of that was because of World War I and World War II, and also revolutionary wars going on in Spain. And so it just kind of fizzled out. It became popular again back in the 1980s and became known again, and people started doing it. They now have, last year they estimated there was 170,000 people that had walked the Camino, some portion of it. There's many different routes. There's the Portuguese route that goes up the coast along the ocean, and I understand it's very scenic. There are other routes throughout, and I don't know all the different routes. I did what they call the French way, which starts in France at the town of Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. That's probably the most popular way right now. It's the longest, and oftentimes it's called the full Camino. So when people say, well, are you doing the full Camino? That's what they mean. Are you doing the whole 500 miles from there? which is what I did. Okay, it took us we were gone 53 days. We walked for about 40 days. We took every Sunday off, and that was a blessing. I'll tell you, I'm glad we scheduled that in to have one day a week off. And I certainly noticed a difference on Monday from Saturday. Saturday, I would crawl into the hotel and barely able to make it, and beat up and tired. And Monday, I was up and raring to go, and let's tackle this today and do it. So that day of rest really made a difference. I used the day of rest to do laundry and to study. I'm in formation to be a third order Carmelite, and so I was doing some of my third order Carmelite studies as I went, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but because that became a very spiritual part of the whole journey. So we started in, as I said, in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is in France, and it's about 25 miles from the Spanish border. So we actually, many people, you can go from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to the town of Roncesvalles, which is in Spain, and that's about 22, 23 miles, I believe. But the people that planned it for us recommended that we split that. And so what you can do is you start in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, you walk up about 10 miles, and then they pick you up and take you back to your hotel, and you spend the night, and then they pick you up in the morning, take you back where you stopped, and then you go on from there. We didn't get quite as far as that stop. We only went about 5 miles that day, and I think we had another 3 or 4 miles to go. And we weren't going to make it in time for the bus to come back, so we stayed where we were, and the bus picked us up there. But anyway, so this is our beginning. This was Monday morning, September 1st. We just got to the trail and said, let's take a picture of the beginning. And so we did a selfie of us, and you can see we're all smiles and happy and ready to go. That changed, but at least we are at this point. Okay, so this was day one, beginning. This here is a river that runs through the town of Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and I just got a shot of the river. It's a very beautiful river. This is the pathway going up in the valley down below, so you can look down. You can see off in the distance the town of Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. Okay. Again, same thing here. You can see the town down below. And here. So the first couple of days, we were crossing the Pyrenees Mountains. And the first 2 days, I think, in my opinion, that was the toughest part of the journey. There's another section where we go up over the mountains, again, another mountain range, and that has the reputation of being the toughest, the hardest part. But I actually thought this was a little more difficult. You can see the hills and the mountains, and we had to climb those. So this is just a picture of the trail going. You can see how it goes uphill, and you know this is over a mile long, just at a steep upgrade. It was sheep country, so you had the sheep around there that we kind of walked amidst and among. They didn't go with us the rest of the way, but they were there. Again, just a shot of the countryside, the valley. Along the way, and you'll see several pictures of this, but along the way, various different places, they have a monument for various reasons. They don't mark anything particular, like, well, somebody died here, or somebody's buried here, or whatever. they're just places that people, communities have set up some kind of a monument, and usually a religious theme like this with a cross. It was amazing, the people we met. Varieties of people. We met people from all over the world, as far away as Thailand, New Zealand, Australia, Argentina, just all over the place. People, a lot from Ireland, England, Germany, and the United States. Those are probably the biggest collections of people. I did meet a young lady that was, met her after Mass one day, and we were talking out in the plaza. She was 80 years old, and she and a friend decided to walk it. She wasn't sure they were going to do the whole thing, but she was walking, and her plan at that point was to do the whole thing, but that was open up in the air. Okay. This just kind of gives you an idea of the trails were various. So some of them were just dirt gravel trails. Some of them were paved roads. Some of them were like this, little stones along the way. So you name it in terms of surface, it was probably there, someplace. And I'll show you some other shots of the trail that. I was just up on this hill and kind of overlooking the valley and the scenery behind me here. A lady came by and said, "You want me to take your picture?" So I said, "Sure." So she took my picture. Okay. A couple times. Again, this gives you an idea of the trails. And you can see the mountains in the background. So we're heading towards the mountains, and at this point, we've already gone over one range. And now we're heading to the next range. And it was 3 days that we were walking towards this particular range. This is a Puente de Dorando. Puente means bridge. So it's the bridge of Doa. And down below is the same thing in Basque. So we went through Basque country, so a lot of the signs while we were going through the Basque country were both in Spanish and Basque. And I don't know if you realize this or not. Oh, that's the bridge there. We're going, and I was just getting ready to go across it. But Basque is the only language known today that cannot be traced back to another language. For example, much of English is Anglo-Saxon or Latin, or so it gets traced to other languages. You cannot do that with the Basque, and it's the only language so it's a unique language. Again, just a shot of the trail and the mountains in the background. Oops, went the wrong way. This was in Lyon, and just as we were walking into the city of Lyon, this group of a band was going down the street playing, and so I got a quick picture. I didn't get a very good one, it's all blurred, but I was in a hurry to take it, so it got blurry. But I just thought it was, and those are typical Basque costumes and clothing there. Again, just the mountains. Took a lot of pictures of the mountains because it seemed like we were always going up a mountain someplace. You can see in the back there, right over, right back here there's a village back here. And I saw that village there, and I thought that was the town we were heading for. And so I was all excited. Oh, there's my town. I'm almost there. Well, that wasn't it. We didn't even go near it. We went around it and off into another direction. So, and just the countryside. Lots of hills and valleys. And here's a, right here you can see there's a village there, a town. See if I can zoom in on that a little bit. Not going to. But yeah, there's a right down back here, you can see a town. Again, I thought that's where we were heading. It wasn't. A lot of mountains. The churches over there were just absolutely phenomenal. Every town, every little village had a church. They all looked pretty much like this. You can see the extents of the artwork, the statuary, and I say, man, how did they ever build these things? How did they ever afford to build them, and how do they maintain them? Because they still got to maintain them. And that's not going to be cheap. But yeah, I was just in awe of the churches. And as I mentioned, every town had, its church. You come into the town, the first building you see is the church, because it's the tallest, the highest building. And most of the towns had an evening mass. They called it a pilgrim's mass. And after the mass, they would do a blessing of the pilgrims. And many times would give us a copy of the blessing that they did, sometimes in English, always in Spanish, but sometimes it would be both Spanish and English. But they were, again, very hospitable and, welcoming and serving. I was amazed at just the service of the pilgrims, whether it's the hotel, you have the receptionists, you have the housekeepers, you have the maintenance people, you have the cooks, you have the waiters and waitresses, all of that stuff. And they're all there to serve the pilgrims. So the pilgrims are on a journey, a pilgrimage. Many of them, for spiritual reasons. Some not. And they're there to serve us. And I really saw that as a ministry, a life of ministry. And I thanked many of them when I had time. As I was checking out, I'd check with the receptionist and I'd tell her thank you. And I'd say, please pass my gratitude on to the others, because we really appreciate your service. And restaurants, the same thing. Hotels, everything, everywhere. I went into a pharmacy because I was having some problems with blisters, and I wanted to make sure they didn't get infected, so I wanted something to put on them. And the pharmacist was just so helpful. I went in and told her what I wanted, and she's showing me all kinds of things to help prevent blisters and stuff. And I said, I already got that, and I already got the blisters. I want something to put on the blisters for healing. And she goes behind the counter and opens up a drawer and picks out a tube of stuff, gives it to me, sells it to me. I was at the doctor Wednesday, went to the podiatrist because I've got some foot issues. And she saw the open wound still on my feet, and so she reached in and grabbed some stuff to give me. It was the same stuff the pharmacist gave me in Spain. So I told her, I says, I already got a tube of it. Again, just another church, another picture of the church. I'm amazed at at the artwork in these churches. You can see here in front is a stone with an arrow. They use the yellow arrow is the official marking of the Camino. It's the only marking that's official, and nobody else can use it. So it's used just for indicating the way, the direction for the path in the Camino. You'll see, I'll show you some shells too, because the shell is another symbol, but all kinds of people put those on their businesses. If they have a business that serves the pilgrims, they'll put shells up there. So they don't always, they aren't real accurate in terms of marking the way, but you can follow them pretty close. So we had a variety of agriculture. Here's a wheat field. So we went through wheat fields, wine vineyards. You saw the sheep. There were cattle. And I found it interesting. I discovered something that I didn't know. There would be a group of cattle, and one would have a bell on it. And the rest of the cattle would follow the one with the bell. So as the bell walked over here to get food or whatever, or was walking back to the house or to the corral or whatever, the bell would ring and all the other cattle would follow. And that was interesting to watch them do that. I hadn't seen that before. And I lived in cattle country for 40 years. Again, just a shot of a wheat field along the way. And here's the grape vineyards. I didn't get up close to see the grapes, but another church in the next town. More wheat fields in our trail. So again, you can see the sign with the arrow pointing the direction, and then it also has the shell. You noticed on our first picture, we were each wearing that Camino shell. That shell is a symbol of the Camino, and people who are pilgrims on the way, will wear a shell. A lot of them carried it on their backpacks. They just had it tied on the back of their backpack or something. I wore mine on my front all the time. But this is a monastery. It's kind of built back into the rock. So you see the cliff there, and then this is built back into it. There's an up close of the sign giving us direction. You can see the kind of trail here. It's more of a gravel trail and rock. A lot of the signs had graffiti on them like this, of various different, some with political statements, some with other things. That was just a cross, that was, again, a monument that they put up somewhere along the way. It was just a cross up on the hill. Thought I deleted that one, but I guess not. This is that's actually a video of the cross. This was a church just on the edge of a town. As I was leaving town, I saw that, and I said, I'm going to get a picture of that. But again, you can see how spectacular they are, grandiose. And again, I wonder how in the world did they ever pay for them, and how do they maintain them? But they do. I have an aunt who lived in northeast Iowa. And Memorial Day every year, she would go around Northeast Iowa and visit all the graves of relatives. And she took me with her one time, and we went into a town, and she was telling me about the town. And they have, again, they have a church not quite as elaborate as this, but it's the Gothic style with the big pillars, and just absolutely beautiful, and a big tower, clock tower, and whatever. Well, she told me that what happened is the German farmers settled that area. And it's very rich farmland. And they got wealthy. And they put their money in their church. And, you couldn't do that today. Kind of church. Something like this, what would that cost? You're talking billions of dollars probably. Build something like that. And then the artwork that's in it. This was cool. This was just along the trail as you come into a town, and it's a lean-to, and then painted on it, so this is a painting. Somebody had painted, there's a pilgrim sitting there by his fire. He's got down here, right there, no, that's not either. I was thinking that was his, that might be. I think that's his passport. You get a, I should have brought it with me. I wanted to, but I forgot it. You get a passport, and it stretches out. Every town you go in, you get a stamp. So you can get stamps at a hotel, you can get a stamp at most restaurants, and all your hotels, restaurants, churches, and so you get a stamp everywhere you go. And then the last 100 kilometers, you have to have 2 stamps from each town, or each day. Each day you have to have 2 stamps. And up to that point, you have to have 1 stamp every day. Then when you get to Santiago de Compostela, you go to the pilgrim's office, you show them your document, and they give you a certificate that says you completed it. And you filled out an application that asks you where you started, where you finished, when you started. So your certificate will have that information on there. And so it says that we started in St. John Pied de Port on September 1st. We ended in Santiago de Compostela on October 18th. And and it's in Latin. And it's an official document of the church. The Archbishop signs it. It's got his signature on it. There's a close-up picture of it. And you can see some of the stamps he's got here on his passport. Okay, let me come over here. So, like right here, this is a stamp, that's a stamp, that's another stamp. So generally you can get 6 stamps on a page. Got his dog with him. You see his shell right here, he's got it on his backpack. Some of these towns, it's interesting because some of them you can see for miles away. And you see it, you say, oh, there's my town. And then you look at your GPS and it says you still got 6 miles to go, or whatever. And then others, you're looking at your GPS and it says you got 2 miles to go, and you can't see the town yet. There's no sign of it. You look around, there's nothing. And then pretty soon you come up around a corner and there's the church and the town and whatever. And then some of the bigger towns, even after we got to town, I'm thinking of oh, what was that town? It wasn't Leon. Plano. Anyway, there was one town we got to, and I got to town. I see the town. I see the sign that says you're in this town, and I said, "Oh, good, I'm almost there." I look at my GPS. It says 8 miles. I had to walk all the way through the city to get to my hotel. Now, this was fun. So you can see here a road. This is the trail going up the hill. And yes, you get to walk up there. And it goes on up and up and up and up. And then you come across this way. But, and then here, this is the top of that hill. So I'm up at the top of the hill, and I took a picture of the valley down below. And you can see off in the distance back here, I think it's back over here. Where is it? Okay. Yeah, I think it's right in here. Is the town that I had just left. This is a strange flower. Does anybody know what this is? There's no stem on this flower. It's just the blossom coming right up out of the ground. And I found it so interesting, so I took a couple pictures of it. I thought I must have deleted the other one. But yeah, and I just found it interesting that there's no stem. It's just the blossom on top of the ground. "400 kilometers to go." These were interesting because they have these markers all along the way. So you'll see one here that says 400 kilometers. And then you go walk 5 kilometers, and you'll see one that says 410 kilometers. So they weren't real accurate. But it gave me a little bit of hope anyway. This is probably my favorite picture. This sign marks the town. As you come into the town, that is halfway between Roncesvalles, the first town in Spain, and Santiago. So what the sign says is "Bienvenidos," welcome. Ledigos is the name of the town. Centro del Camino, center of the El Camino Francés to Santiago. West, 380 kilometers. So 380 kilometers west to Santiago. And so 380 kilometers to Santiago de Compostela. Roncesvalles, which is the first town you get to in Spain, 380 kilometers. So this is the halfway point, 760 kilometers. And okay, there's that flower again. You see more of it. See how it just comes right out of the ground. There's no stem or anything on it. This is an old Roman bridge. So think of people crossing this bridge back in 3rd, 4th century during the Roman Empire. That's another shot of it, and another, and another. And this is another bridge coming into a town, and you can see this is all dry, but the bridge goes over it. So I'm presuming that during high water, when they have that there's water there, and that's a river. but it was dry when we were there. And right here, that was our hotel for the night. I was happy here because I'm just coming into town, so it's right on the edge of town. Just as I'm ready to be there. Unlike the other one where I got into town and I still had 8 miles to go. Again, the same bridge, the bridge for the hotel. Okay, so after I left town and walked a little ways, we've gone, so between the last one, the 400 kilometers, now we're down to 269 kilometers. So it's a little bit farther. I ran into these two ladies from Taiwan, or Thailand, I think they were from. And we just stopped and visited a little bit. And they said, "Do you want your picture?" And I said, "Sure." So one of them got in the picture with me, and the other one took the picture. So. Another cross monument. And some places, you know, they would have benches along the way for you to sit on, and water supplies oftentimes were along the trail. There's the church again. Phenomenal. I met a couple, the first day we were there, we met a couple from Louisiana. I'm thinking Baton Rouge. They have 5 daughters. All 5 of them got married last summer. When they told me that, the first thought I had in my mind was, how did you pay for them? But they were planning on doing the Camino last spring. Well, then all their daughters decided to get married, so they postponed it to the fall, and they were doing it this fall. And they were with us for about a week, the first week that we were walking. And we would oftentimes have dinner with them in the evening. Or, we'd see them at Mass and then go have dinner afterwards or something. And then after the week, I think we hit a Sunday, so we had a day off, and they were continuing on. So I didn't see them anymore after that. Now this is a marker that is up at the top, kind of close to the. It's not right at the highest point, but it's close to the highest point that you cross the mountains, and so you can see down along the bottom of it. There's rocks. These are all rocks. And what happens, or what they do, the idea is you bring a rock with you from home. Now, I didn't know this, so I didn't take a rock. I got lots of rocks. I could have taken one. But you bring a rock from home, you carry it with you up that far, and then you leave it. You're leaving your burdens there and going on down the road. But Margaret had a rock, and she did leave a rock there. So, between us, we have a rock up there. Okay, so now we're up at the top, the highest point, and again looking down the valley. And so the reward for climbing up to the top is to look down into the valley. And you can see the town down there. Again. Okay, so we went up. Whatever goes up has to go down. So this is the downside. And this was probably over a mile long. And you can see the rock. It was unstable. It was uneven. You very definitely had to watch your step, make sure you didn't twist an ankle or something or fall. And of course, you're going downhill, so you got gravity pulling you down. I was definitely using my sticks to keep me up. I did come across a lady probably in her 60s, caught up to her, and she, as I passed her, she told me she had fallen. and she was wanting to get into the next town to get to a drugstore to get something to put on. She'd scratched her face a little. It was just scratched. And I had a first aid kit with me, so I had some antiseptic cream with me, and I told her, I says, I got some stuff I can put on that if you want. She says, no, I'll just wait till I get to the town and go to the drugstore. She was okay. It wasn't all that bad. But that was, imagine walking that for a mile. And this was the slowest part of the trip. I was walking an average of about 2 to 2.5 miles an hour. Now, when I say average, okay, I should probably say an average of 2, because that would count the stops. So I'd stop and rest or stop and eat lunch or whatever. So throughout the day, I figured 2 miles an hour. So if I had 13 miles that day, I figured we were walking 6.5 hours. If I had 17 miles, I figured, well, we're going to walk 8.5 hours. So, but it also depended on how much stopping I did, because my speed of walking was probably about 2.5 miles an hour. But then by the time I took breaks and whatever, it came out to an average of 2. Here, I was probably doing 1 mile an hour going down these hills. Very difficult. You can get that. I think that's a better picture of it there. And this is just again a village that we're heading to. See the big mountain behind it and the village. I don't know who took that picture, but somebody stopped and took a picture for me. You what? I was using walking sticks, and I didn't want to get blisters on my hand from the walking sticks, so I wore gloves.
How did you get food and water during the day?
Okay, there were, well, first there were towns along the way, so you can, you might, probably a long distance between towns would be 5 miles. And so, and all these towns had restaurants that, again, catered to the pilgrims. So I would stop there and fill up my water bottles and maybe get lunch. There was one stretch on the 3rd day that we walked, and we were told about this ahead of time, so we were prepared. You have a long stretch of about 10 miles where there's no water. And they told us that when you go here, be sure you have water with you. So I carried water. I carried 1 pint of water for every 2 hours that I was going to be walking. So if I figured, okay, I got 13 miles today, that's 6.5 hours. I'm going to carry 6-7 ounces of pints, not ounces, pints, pint bottles. And I would stop every 2 hours and drink a pint along with some electrolytes. I had electrolytes with me. That was part of my morning routine, was to make sure I had enough water for the day. Do what? Oh, man. The weather was absolutely wonderful. 70 to 80 degrees all the way. And a couple things. There were 2 days that I got up and the sky is as black as my shirt. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get wet today. I said, I could put my rain gear on now, or I can wait till it starts raining and put it on in the rain. And I decided to wait. I got out on the road, and the wind starts picking up, and you could smell the rain in the air. and I felt, 4 or 5 drops of water on my arm. And I said, Lord, don't make it rain. And it quit. That was it. That was the end. And the sun came out. I had to put my sunscreen on. It was beautiful. And that happened twice. The only day of rain that we had was the Sunday that we were in Santiago de Compostela. We got there Saturday, spent the night, got up Sunday morning, walking to the basilica to go to church, and I was walking in the rain. And other than that, no rain at all. We were blessed with beautiful weather. And as I said, I talked to people, when I got to Santiago de Compostela, I talked to people who said they had 2 or 3 days of rain, that they were walking in rain for 2 or 3 days. And they were just a different time and a different place than I was, because we had no rain. You can see it clouding up here. And I'm thinking, okay, it's going to rain. We didn't get any rain. Just another monument along the way. This is one of my favorite shots. This is at the highest point on the Camino. 4,500 feet, I believe it is, something like that, right in that area. And this guy's up there playing the bagpipes. And I got up there and I stopped and I was listening to him, and he looks at me and he says, this is your reward for walking up here. And I said, yeah, it is. I mean, I mentioned before, the reward of walking up there was you got to look down at the valley. And I do that so many times when I get to a top of a mountain. I say, how many people are there in the world that never see this because they're not willing to walk up here? This is amazing. There's a grumpy old guy. Another village off in the distance. I think this is another one where I thought this was the town we were going to. Well, it's not. It's back over here somewhere. There's a giant shell, that somebody had put up along the way. Nice picture of it there. Okay, here's the 100,000, or the 100 kilometers. The comma does not mean 100,000. They use commas instead of decimal points. Okay, so it's 100 kilometers. Now, to get the certificate, you have to cover 100 kilometers. And in those last 100 kilometers, you have to have a stamp, 2 stamps a day, to certify that you did those 100 kilometers. There's a town about 10 kilometers from here called Seria, and so that's the last town that you can start in and get your 100 kilometers. And so a lot of people start there. They have an airport there, people fly in, they start there, they go. I was walking along the way on the trail. I was going to get a picture of it, but I didn't. Somebody had put a sign up that said, "Christ did not start in Syria." And I found there was a very different atmosphere on the way after Syria. Just the attitude of people was different. A lot more people. So you go into a restaurant and you have to wait to get in. you're at a restaurant eating and a group comes in, and this is a group, so they're coming as a tour, and they're noisy and they're loud and they're playing their music and whatever. Prior to that, it was pretty quiet. And you had a lot of solitude, a lot of quiet, a lot of prayer. So it was a very different atmosphere. There was a group of teenagers, about 40 of them, that were doing that last 100 kilometers. They were the noisy ones. I admired them because they were at Mass every night. So I'd go to Mass, get to town and go to Mass, and they'd be there. And they would sing during the Mass, participate. I was told by somebody that it was the graduating class of a high school, Catholic high school. And as part of their graduation trip, they did 100 kilometers of the Camino. I met the priest that was with them in a restaurant. I was at Mass the night, 2 nights, that night before and the night before that, so 2 nights in a row. And he celebrated Mass. So I saw him in a restaurant and I recognized him. And I went up and I asked him, and I said, are you a priest? I said, you're with these kids, you're a priest? He said, yeah, I am. I said, yeah, I saw you at Mass. And told him, I said, I'm a priest from the United States. And, but I did see you at Mass, and we talked and visited a little bit. He went on his way. And he wasn't walking it, he had a car. Yeah. All right. There's that handsome guy again. And this is just another monument. You can look at the intricacy of the carving on it. It's quite interesting. No. Okay, you can see I do have a backpack. But the only thing I have in the backpack, I have some water, I have a raincoat, first aid kit, an extra pair of shoes, and that's about it. And some electrolytes that I carry to keep with the water. We used a service that made hotel reservations for us. So we had hotel reservations every day. So we had to get to our hotel. And they told us when we set it up, they said, you have to get to your hotel. Whether you take a bus, you take a taxi, you walk, whatever you want to do, but you have to get to your hotel because you can't change the reservation. Because if I change this one, that changes everything down the line. And you just can't do that. So they said, you have to get to your hotels every day. And then they transported our luggage from one hotel to the next. 2 days, twice in the same week, my luggage didn't make it. First time I get to the hotel and I go in and the receptionist says, you have reservations for 2, right? I says, yeah, for me and for Margaret. And he said, there's only 1 luggage. Is there supposed to be 2? I said, yeah, there's supposed to be 2. And I looked and there's Margaret sitting there. So I said, I guess mine's not here. And she said, he came and dropped him off. And I told him there's supposed to be 2. He said, no, there's only 1. They'd left mine at the previous hotel. So we called the company and they sent a taxi to pick it up and delivered it. And they paid for it. The second time, the same thing happened. They just didn't pick it up. And it was 10 miles down the road, so it was a 10-mile taxi delivery. But I got my luggage. Okay, yeah, I thought so. So if you look back here, you see these three steeples here? That's the Basilica, San Diego de Compostela, that we're heading to, where St. James is buried. We are 10 kilometers from there. So this is the first site that you have of the Basilica, first place where you can see the Basilica. And so we got pictures of it. This was, I met a lady from Australia. Very nice lady, very nice. And we walked these last 10 kilometers together, 6 miles. And so she got this picture for me. And that's the same house that you saw in the other one, and I think you can see the steeples in the background. Yeah. So here's the steeples in the background again, right back here. Peaks. So this is Santiago de Compostela. I'm missing a picture, but you had it up here earlier. So the sign that says Santiago de Compostela was the sign at the city limits welcoming you to the town. Again, you can see the three steeples in the background. This is an archway that you have to go through to get to the Basilica. You can see the Basilica back here, just a corner of it. But that's the archway, and then there's the Basilica. That's our destination. That's what we're heading for. That's where we're going. And absolutely gorgeous. So there's 2 or 3 pictures of those. That's my certificate. So, one of the things I was told in going over there is that the journey will be a physical challenge, a mental challenge, and a spiritual challenge. And it was certainly all 3 of those. All 3. The physical is obvious. Every day, well, for probably the last 3 weeks particularly, before that not quite so much so, but the last 3 weeks I would get to my hotel room and my feet would just hurt. And I'd take my shoes off and get a shower and put sandals on and probably walk to church for Mass that night. It was interesting because our hotels were always within a half a mile of the church. I think I had to walk a half a mile one time to the church. Otherwise, it was 2 or 3 blocks down the street. And so we would go to Mass. And dinner, restaurants are different there in the sense they are open in the afternoon from 2:30 to 4:30. And they close. Then they're open again from 7:30 or 8 till 10. So you have to eat during those times. And I found that I really could get by with eating breakfast and 1 meal. So that's kind of what I did. And so as I was walking, if I was going to get into a town before 4 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock, I would wait until I got to town, check into the hotel, and then I'd go get some dinner before they closed at 4:30. But usually I had to be there by 3:30. By the time I got checked in, got my stuff up to my room, changed shoes, it'd be a half hour or so. So you really needed to be there by 3:30 if you're going to be at the restaurant by 4. One of the restaurants, what? I took the pictures of food out. Oh. I think I deleted that picture. When I was coming into Lyon, I'm walking down this main street, and there's a big sign there for Burger King. So I took a picture of it, I sent it to Brian, and I said, should I? He texts back and says, no. It was another 4 miles down the road. So I got down there, and by now it's like 6 o'clock, five at least 6. And so I said, oh, I'm going to stop and get a hamburger. So I did stop and get a burger. And then I walked out of the Burger King, and there's a McDonald's right across the street. Okay. But generally speaking, so we would have breakfast in the morning, usually about 8 o'clock. I'd eat breakfast. Breakfast, if you've been to Europe, you know the European breakfast. It's very different than ours. So breakfast would be some sliced meat, deli meat, ham, sausage, whatever, bread, maybe an egg, and probably boiled, but some places they actually have fried eggs for you. Yogurt, coffee, orange juice. Oh, I fell in love with orange juice again. Oh, most of these restaurants had fresh squeezed orange juice, and it was cold, and it was good. Oh, I can almost taste it. So that would be breakfast. Maybe some fruit, watermelon, apple, bananas, whatever. So that would be breakfast, and then I would walk. And like I said, if I was going to get to the town where I was going in time to hit a restaurant and eat the afternoon meal, then I would wait until I got there. If I wasn't, if it was going to be 5:30, 6 o'clock when I got there, or 4 even, I would stop somewhere between 2 and 4:30 at a restaurant in a town and eat. Meals were, I tell you what, American chefs could learn something. One of the things I learned, they go for quality, not quantity. But what American restaurants lack in quality, they make up for in quantity. So you order a steak, you get a 16-ounce, 14-ounce steak. I ordered a steak over there. It was, about that thick, about that big, so maybe 8 ounces. But it was delicious, absolutely delicious. And then the meals always came with French fries. That was the one thing. I did have a few places where they let me substitute salad for the French fries. But instead of French fries like this, which you get when you go down here to wherever, it would be like this, just a small portion of French fries. But it was filling. And so meals, they had what they called the Pilgrim's meal, or else it was called the menu of the day. And it would start out with three entrees. So you'd have 3 choices of an appetizer. It would probably be a salad. And their salads were very different. So the salads might be slices of tomato, slices of cucumber, slices of onion, and some pieces of cheese, chunks of cheese, and probably cream cheese or something like that, but a very soft cheese. So different, kind of a different type of salad. But you could also get a salad typical to what we're accustomed to. So they would usually have a salad or 2 different options for a salad, and a pasta dish as an option for an appetizer. Then the main meal, the entree, would be either chicken. And if it was chicken, it was going to be a thigh and a leg, drumstick and a thigh. Steak, ribs, maybe a pork chop. So usually 3 of those, and you choose one. And then they'd have a dessert. And the desserts might be a cheesecake, a chocolate cake, or ice cream, or typical desserts that we might have here. And usually came with a glass of wine also. So I would eat, if I could, and it worked with the schedule, I would eat the afternoon meal, and then I wouldn't eat in the evening. Partially because Mass would be at 7:30, so I get done with 8:30, and restaurants weren't open until then, so I'd have to go to eat after Mass, and that was just too late for me. Go to bed. So the physical challenge for me was primarily my feet. I did have some issues with sore feet. But like I said, I would get to my room, I'd take a shower, put sandals on, walk to church. My feet would hurt going to church. I'd come back, go to bed, get up the next morning, they'd be fine. They didn't hurt anymore. And I'd walk the next day. And then by the time I got to the end of the day, they'd be hurting again. Then somebody asked me one day, said, "Father, what do you do when you hit that wall and you can't go?" And it hadn't happened yet. I was about my 5th or 6th, I think my 6th week of walking. It hadn't happened. I wasn't sure how to answer it, so I just said, well, you just put one foot in front of the other and keep going. And she says, yeah, but what about when you can't? And I says, well, then that's when prayer comes in. The interesting thing is the next day it happened. I had a 13-mile walk that day. I got 3 miles down the road, and I was dead. I said, I have no energy. I don't know if I can move. And I went past a restaurant. I was going through a town. I went past a restaurant. There was a taxi out front. And I said, I could take a taxi. He says, nope, I'm not going to. So I kept going. I got out of town. I no more than get out of town, and I'm faced with a hill, a steep hill, at least a mile long, 8 to 10% grade. And it's one of those hills that, you look up and you say, oh, it ends there, but when you get there, it doesn't. It keeps going. And then you look up and you say, okay, it's going to end there, and then it doesn't. And you just keep going and going. And I said, I don't know if I can get up this hill. So what I did is I would pick out a spot, maybe 100 yards down the road. There's a clump of trees there. There's a rock formation or something. I'm going to make it to that rock formation. And I would go. And I'd get there and I'd pick out another spot. Say, okay, I'm going to make it to there. And I get there and I pick out another spot. And pretty soon I'm within 100 feet of the top, and I say, I'm going to make it to the top. And then I got to the top and I said, I'm going to make it into town. And when I get to town, it'll be about 4 or 5 miles that I've walked today. It'll be such and such a time. It'll be time to stop and eat lunch. And I'll stop and eat and get some energy. I did find breaks. Breaks were helpful. So I tried to take a break every 2 miles. Sometimes it might be 3. I get to 2 miles and there's not really any place to sit down and take a break. So I go another mile or until I could find a bench or a log or a rock or something to sit on and drink some water with electrolytes, and that really energized me. I also found that there were times that I would change shoes in the middle of the day if I had a long walk. That helped. Just taking the shoes off for half an hour or so would help. Those are some of the things I did to get over that hump. I took 3 pair of shoes with me. 3. And I changed every day, so I rotated them between 3 days. Spiritually, before I'd left, I had asked God, I says, why am I doing this? Why are you asking me to do this? And he said, wait and see. Wait and see. So I went. And our Lord revealed to me some of my flaws, some things I need to work on. If I was going to summarize it in one word, it would be love. He just taught me some things about love. I was doing laundry one Sunday, about the 3rd or 4th week, I think it was the 4th week. I was doing my laundry, and while I'm waiting for the machine to run, I'm reading some of my material for Third Order Carmelites, and it's about Teresa of Avila, and she's teaching and talking about love and what it is, and refers us to Corinthians chapter 13, or this 4 to whatever. And, love is patient, love is kind, love is not overbearing, it is not selfish, it does not bear wrongs. And I looked at that and I said, I can work on all of these things. And then I went to Galatians and I started reading about the gifts of the Holy Spirit. The gifts of the Holy Spirit. And I could read it, I think, yeah. That was the first one I really went to, and it really hit me. Okay. Fruits of the Holy Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. I looked at those and I said, I can work on all of those. I can work on all of those. And I'll share a little bit of a story. So remember, one of these is patience. And I said, I'm going to start working on these, right? I get back. I'm at the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport. My brother picks me up. I get in the car. And you know the traffic at the airport. And there's cars are going all different directions. And this car is coming over here. And instead of pulling into the lane and straightening out, he halfway pulls into the lane and halfway in the other lane, so he's blocking 2 lanes of traffic. And I started grousing about it. I said something to my brother. I said, look at this idiot. I said, he's blocking 2 lanes of traffic. And he looks, and he was talking about a perseverance in prayer. And he says, when you go to prayer and it's dry and you don't feel like praying, just show up. Just be there and persevere. Just show up. Just be there and persevere. And I sat down and I said, okay. I just walking up that hill, picking out a spot up there and going. That was perseverance. How do I use that same perseverance that I used in doing this trip in my prayer life? How do I use it in food control? How do I use it,